Okay, today's lesson is two-step equations, section 3-5. I probably should write that in. I don't think I did. There we go. Two-step equations, section 3-5. So today's lesson, you're going to actually be doing multiple steps or multiple things. So over here I wrote really what the definition, because your book didn't really have this, I wrote what the definition of a two-step equation is. So you really should write this down. Two-step equations are equations that have two operations within them. Okay? That's considered a two-step equation. Now, to solve a two-step equation, you have to work backwards. Therefore, your order of operations are also backward. So you do the addition and subtraction to undo the operation before you do the multiplication and division step. However, you still do need to distribute first. If you have parentheses there, you need to distribute first because you have to undo that parenthesis. Okay, so let's go through this real quickly. The first problem that they have here is a negative 3x plus 5 equals 2. So to do that, I'm going to write this down quick. And this is negative. To do that, you have two operations here. The first operation is the multiplication that you have here, and the second operation is the addition that you have there. Okay? So what I need you to do when you're solving equations like that is you're going to, like I said, work backwards, and you're going to undo the subtraction before you do that multiplication. So to do that, because this is plus 5, you're going to subtract, oops, I still have red on, subtract 5, or add a negative 5. So this becomes, I think I'll put it back to black, this becomes then a negative 3x. You just bring the negative 3x down. Before it would just be an x, now it's a negative 3x. And then 2 minus 5, or 2 plus a negative 5, is a negative 3. Okay, now this should look like what you had before, what we just finished doing. So to get this x alone, you need to divide by negative 3. So here, negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1, and because of the multiplicative identity, 1 times x is x. And then a negative 3 divided by a negative 3 is 1. And just like before, you can make sure that this is right by taking that 1 and dumping it back in here, plunking it in for your x to see if it's correct, and it would work out to be correct, and which is what they did over here. Okay? All right. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try this. So I would like you to do number 1 and number 3. Number 1 and then number 3. And then pause your computer, do those, and then come back. Okay. Number 1, I'm going to do them over here, I think. So you have 2x plus 12 equals 4. So to solve that equation, you're first going to do the opposite of the addition to get rid of that addition step, to undo it. So you need to add a negative 12, or you could subtract 12. Either one is fine. They mean the same thing. Okay? You're left over here then with 2x, so you bring down your 2x, you bring down your equal sign, and then 4 plus a negative 12 is a negative 8. Then what you have to do is divide both sides. You're going to divide both sides by 2. And you're left with x equaling a negative 4. Again, to check that, you would plunk that back in for that x. Okay, so negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and negative 8 plus 12 is 4. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, I'm going to erase this now so I have room for my second one. The second problem is a little bit more difficult because you have that distributive step. So there really is an extra step in there, but it really isn't to solve for anything. It's to get the variable, or to get rid of those parentheses, to undo the parentheses, because distributive property will undo your parentheses. So you have 3 times x minus 4 equaling 9. Now you can't do anything with the parentheses because you don't know what x is, but you can distribute it. This is when I was talking about when I introduced the distributive property, and I had said that it's not important to distribute when you have numbers, both numbers inside the parenthesis, but when you have a variable inside that parenthesis, you're going to need to distribute to solve your equation. This is the perfect example of that. So you're going to distribute the 3 over the x, and then I'm going to turn this into plus a negative, and you're going to distribute the 3 over the negative 4, and that would equal your 9. 3 times x is 3x, plus 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, and that still equals 9. So then what you're going to do is you again have to get rid of the addition step, or undo the addition step. So you're going to add, this is adding a negative 12. So you can subtract a negative 12, or it's easier to just add the opposite of 12, which is 12. Then you kind of create those 0 pairs that we do in tiles. You're left then with 3x equals, and then 9 plus 12 is 21. Okay? Now you have to do your division step to undo your multiplication. So 3x divided by 3 will give me x, and 21 divided by 3 will give me 7. Okay, so now if you didn't do these examples right, I really need you to go back and rewatch your video so that you understand what you did or what you did wrong. Okay? So make sure that you do that. Okay, so now we're going to move on. In this example, you have fractions. Well, it looks like fractions. It is fractions, but there's also division involved there. So you have x over 8 minus 1/2 equals a negative 7/2. Okay, I'm going to turn this into plus a negative right away. This then becomes plus a negative 1/2. The opposite of adding a negative 1/2 is subtracting 1/2, or adding the opposite of this 1/2. Actually, it's not subtracting, it's adding. Adding the opposite, which is 1/2. I just really like to do the opposite, adding the opposite instead of subtracting. So then, here, those equal 0, so you're left with the x over 8, to bring that down, equals, and then a negative 7/2 plus 1/2 is going to be a negative 6/2. So what I did when I solved this problem is I knew you could leave it as negative 6/2, but I know that 2 can go into 6, and that it would be an even number, a whole number. So I changed it to x over 8 equals, and then negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Then this is division. The opposite of division is multiplication. So you have to multiply both sides by the number that you're dividing by. So you're going to multiply both sides by 8. These two end up being 1, and 1 times x is x. So because of the multiplicative identity, you can bring down your x, and then a negative 3 times 8 is a negative 24. That's how you do those types of problems. Okay? So now I would like you to pause your computer, and I would like you to do number 4. Pause your computer and do number 4. Okay, so your number 4 is m over 2 plus 6 equals 10. Okay, so again, you're going to get rid of your addition step. So you're going to add the opposite of a negative 2, or subtract 6. And again, I like to add the opposite because I like to keep it consistent with the tiles. So these two, positive 6 and a negative 6, are like 0 pairs. They're opposites, so they drop out and you end up with 0. When you add opposites, you end up with 0. So you can bring down then your m over 2. 10 plus a negative 6 is 4. Okay, now we have the division step, m divided by 2. So to get rid of that division, we have to multiply both sides by the whole number 2, or 2 over 1. You end up here then, I'm not going to write it underneath because I don't have room. I'm going to write it next to it. You should write it underneath though. Is m equals, and 4 times 2 is 8. If you got that right, you can move on. If not, you should rewatch your video.